September 15, 1944, Peleliu Island, Western Pacific. Japanese infantry never expected the Winchester M12 trench guns to tear through their defenses with slam-fire capability that would redefine close-quarters combat forever. In the pre-dawn darkness, Marine Private First Class Eugene Sledge gripped his Winchester Model 12 shotgun, its pump-action mechanism cold against his sweating palms. Around him, landing craft engines roared toward what Japanese Major General Kunio Nakagawa believed were impregnable coral fortifications. For months, Nakagawa's men had carved tunnels and bunkers into Peleliu's limestone ridges, creating a defensive maze designed to bleed American forces dry. But they had never faced the devastating power of America's industrial war machine. The M12's slam-fire feature could unleash 6 rounds of 12-gauge buckshot in under 3 seconds. Each shell contained 9 .33 caliber pellets traveling at 200 feet per second. What happened when this revolutionary weapon met Japan's most fortified positions would shock both armies and change Pacific warfare forever. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The massive engines of the amphibious assault vehicles churned through the Pacific swells as dawn broke over Peleliu's jagged coral coastline. Eugene Sledge felt the spray of salt water across his face as he checked his Winchester Model 12 for the 100th time. The weapon's walnut stock bore the scars of training, but today would mark its first taste of combat. Around him, fellow Marines of the 1st Marine Division prepared for what intelligence promised would be a 3-day operation to secure the strategic airfield. Major General Kunio Nakagawa observed the approaching American fleet through his field glasses from a concealed observation post carved deep into the island's central ridge. His 10,500 defenders had spent months transforming Peleliu into a fortress of interconnected caves, tunnels, and reinforced bunkers. The coral limestone had proven ideal for defensive construction, allowing his engineers to create positions that could withstand direct hits from naval artillery. Nakagawa was confident that his new defensive strategy of attrition would prove far more effective than the suicidal banzai charges that had failed elsewhere. The strategic importance of Peleliu lay in its airfield, which could support American bomber operations against the Philippines. General Douglas MacArthur needed this stepping stone for his promised return, and Admiral Chester Nimitz's island-hopping campaign required elimination of this Japanese stronghold. Neither commander anticipated the brutal 74-day battle that would follow, nor the weapon that would prove decisive in breaking Japan's most sophisticated Pacific defenses. Sledge's landing craft hit the beach at 8:32 hours, and immediately the Marines faced withering fire from concealed positions. The Japanese had learned from previous defeats, abandoning the waterline defenses that had proven vulnerable to naval bombardment. Instead, they waited in the coral ridges, turning every cave into a fortress and every tunnel into a death trap. 3,000 miles away in New Haven, Connecticut, the Winchester Repeating Arms Company operated at maximum capacity, its assembly lines producing 500 Model 12 shotguns daily. The factory workers, many of them women who had replaced men sent to fight overseas, assembled each weapon with precision that would have impressed peacetime craftsmen. The Model 12's reputation for reliability had made it a favorite among American sportsmen, but its wartime modifications transformed it into something far more deadly. The M12's slam-fire capability represented a revolutionary advancement in close-quarters combat weapons. Unlike traditional shotguns that required the trigger to be released between shots, the M12 could fire continuously as long as the trigger remained depressed and the pump action operated. This feature, combined with its 6-shot capacity, could deliver devastating firepower in confined spaces like bunkers and caves. Each 12-gauge shell contained 9 pellets of .33 caliber buckshot, creating a cone of destruction that could clear an entire room in seconds. American industrial production had reached staggering proportions by 1944. The United States manufactured 2.4 million rifles monthly, 750,000 machine guns annually, and 41 billion rounds of ammunition yearly. This represented more than the combined output of Germany, Japan, and Italy throughout the entire war. While Japanese soldiers often carried rifles manufactured in the 1920s and relied on ammunition rationing, American Marines landed with the latest technological innovations and unlimited supplies. The contrast extended beyond weapons to every aspect of military logistics. American forces consumed 200,000 tons of supplies daily across all theaters, supported by a merchant marine that launched one Liberty ship every 42 hours. Meanwhile, Japan's merchant fleet, reduced to fewer than 1.5 million tons by submarine warfare, struggled to supply even basic necessities to its scattered garrisons. The industrial capacity that had once seemed merely impressive now revealed itself as the decisive factor in modern warfare. Winchester's Model 12 production exemplified this industrial advantage. Each shotgun required 127 precisely machined parts, assembled by workers whose productivity had increased 300% since Pearl Harbor. The factory's quality control rejected fewer than 0.3% of completed weapons, a reliability rate that Japanese manufacturers, hampered by material shortages and conscript labor, could not approach. When Eugene Sledge landed on Peleliu, his M12 represented not just a weapon, but the entire productive might of American democracy. The technological superiority extended to ammunition production. Lake City Army Ammunition Plant produced 15 million rounds of small arms ammunition daily, while DuPont's powder production exceeded Japan's entire annual capacity every 6 weeks. Each 12-gauge shell in Sledge's bandolier contained cordite manufactured to specifications that ensured consistent velocity and pattern, giving American forces predictable and overwhelming firepower advantages in every engagement. The first Japanese bunker that Eugene Sledge encountered on Orange Beach taught him the true value of his Winchester M12. Concealed in the coral, limestone and reinforced with steel rails salvaged from Peleliu's mining operations, the position had withstood 3 hours of naval bombardment without significant damage. Its occupants had emerged to rake the beach with machine gun fire, pinning down 2 Marine squads and inflicting heavy casualties. Traditional infantry tactics called for grenades or flamethrowers to neutralize such positions, but Sledge found himself alone when his squad leader fell to sniper fire. The bunker's firing port, barely 18 inches wide, seemed impossible to assault directly. Yet, as Sledge approached from the blind side, he discovered that the M12's spread pattern was perfectly suited for the confined space. His first shot, fired at point-blank range into the bunker's interior, created a cone of destruction that no human could survive. The psychological impact on nearby Japanese defenders proved as devastating as the physical damage. They had trained to resist grenades whose explosions were familiar sounds of war. The distinctive roar of a 12-gauge shotgun, followed by screams that ended abruptly, created a terror that spread through their defensive network. Radio intercepts later revealed Japanese communications describing thunder weapons that could kill multiple defenders with single shots. Japanese Major Takeshi Yamaguchi, commanding the 2nd Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, reported to Major General Nakagawa that American forces were employing weapons of unprecedented destructiveness in close combat. His men, veterans of campaigns in China and the Philippines, had never encountered anything like the M12's devastating effectiveness in tunnel warfare. Traditional defensive tactics, based on forcing attackers into predictable patterns, collapsed when facing weapons that could clear entire positions in seconds. The technical specifications that made the M12 so effective were precisely what Japanese intelligence had failed to anticipate. The weapon's 20-inch barrel provided optimal pellet spread for bunker clearing while maintaining sufficient velocity for penetration. Its pump-action mechanism, manufactured to tolerances of 0.001 inches, functioned reliably despite coral dust and saltwater exposure that jammed other weapons. Most critically, the slam fire feature allowed sustained firepower that overwhelmed defenders before they could react. Sledge's company advanced 400 yards inland by nightfall, a pace that stunned Japanese commanders who had expected the Americans to gain perhaps 50 yards on the first day. Each bunker and cave that fell to M12 assault tactics demonstrated the obsolescence of traditional fortification methods. The Japanese had built their defenses to withstand conventional weapons, but the shotgun's unique capabilities rendered their engineering calculations meaningless. By evening, radio traffic between Japanese positions revealed growing panic about American special weapons. Nakagawa ordered his reserve companies to prepare new defensive tactics, but his options were limited. The coral terrain that provided excellent defensive positions also created the confined spaces where shotguns proved most deadly. Japan's defenders found themselves trapped in fortifications that had become death traps when faced with weapons they had never imagined. The second day of the Peleliu assault revealed the M12's effectiveness on a scale that transformed American tactical doctrine. As Marine companies advanced into the island's interior, they encountered the sophisticated cave networks that represented Japan's most advanced defensive engineering. These positions, carved 30 feet into solid coral and connected by tunnels that could shelter entire companies, had been designed to survive direct hits from 16-inch naval rifles. Eugene Sledge's squad leader, Gunnery Sergeant Elmo Haney, had initially been skeptical of the shotgun's military utility. A veteran of Guadalcanal and Cape Gloucester, Haney preferred the proven reliability of the M1 Garand rifle. However, after witnessing Sledge clear 3 cave positions in succession, Haney requisitioned M12s for his entire squad. The weapon's ability to neutralize multiple defenders in seconds exceeded anything he had seen in 2 years of Pacific combat. The Japanese defensive strategy relied on interlocking fields of fire and mutual support between positions. Each cave was positioned to cover approaches to neighboring caves, creating a network that could theoretically hold indefinitely. However, the M12's effectiveness in close combat disrupted this carefully planned system. Once American forces penetrated a single position, they could use its tunnels to attack neighboring caves from unexpected angles. Major General Nakagawa received reports that defied his understanding of modern warfare. Positions that should have required hours to reduce were falling in minutes. His carefully planned defensive zones, designed to inflict maximum casualties on attacking forces, were being rolled up faster than he could redistribute his reserves. The American advance, which intelligence had predicted would stall within days, maintained momentum that threatened to overwhelm his entire defensive plan. The technical advantages of American small arms extended beyond individual weapons to integrated tactical systems. Each Marine squad carried standardized ammunition that allowed rapid redistribution based on tactical requirements. When Sledge's squad expended their initial shotgun shells, resupply arrived within hours via amphibious vehicles that could navigate Peleliu's coral reef barriers. Japanese forces, by contrast, often waited weeks for ammunition, resupply, and frequently found that delivered supplies were incompatible with their mixed arsenal of weapons. American industrial logistics demonstrated capabilities that Japanese planners had considered impossible. The 1st Marine Division's initial ammunition load included 50,000 rounds of 12-gauge buckshot, representing more shotgun ammunition than the Japanese military had possessed throughout its entire history. When this supply was exhausted by the 3rd day, replacement stocks arrived aboard fast. Transport vessels that had departed California ammunition depots only 5 days earlier. The psychological impact of the M12 extended beyond its immediate tactical effects. Japanese soldiers reported that the weapon's distinctive sound created terror that disrupted unit cohesion. Unlike rifle fire, which followed predictable patterns, the shotgun's irregular rhythm and devastating results created uncertainty that spread through defensive positions faster than tactical communications. Radio intercepts revealed Japanese officers struggling to maintain morale among troops who faced weapons unlike anything in their experience or training. By the 5th day of operations, the Winchester M12 had proven so effective that Marine commanders began modifying standard assault tactics to maximize its potential. Traditional infantry doctrine emphasized rifle fire and grenades for bunker reduction, but the M12's unique capabilities demanded new approaches. Eugene Sledge found himself designated as his squad's primary cave-clearing specialist, a role that would have been unimaginable before the Peleliu campaign. The Japanese positions on Peleliu's central ridge represented the pinnacle of defensive engineering. Major General Nakagawa had concentrated his most experienced troops in caves that extended 200 feet into solid coral, connected by tunnels that formed an underground fortress. These positions had been designed to withstand the heaviest bombardment the Americans could deliver, yet they proved vulnerable to weapons that cost $43 to manufacture. Sledge's most challenging engagement occurred at a cave complex designated Hill 200 by Marine intelligence. The position commanded the approaches to Peleliu's airfield and had been reinforced with concrete and steel salvaged from the island's phosphate mining equipment. 3 companies of Marines had attempted frontal assaults over 2 days, suffering heavy casualties without gaining significant ground. The breakthrough came when Sledge discovered a narrow fissure in the coral that provided access to the cave's rear chambers. The M12's slam fire capability proved decisive in the confined underground spaces. Traditional weapons required careful aiming and multiple shots to neutralize targets, but the shotgun's spread pattern made precision unnecessary. Sledge could fire 6 rounds in rapid succession, clearing entire chamber networks before defenders could coordinate effective resistance. The weapon's psychological impact was equally important, as the thunderous reports in enclosed spaces created disorientation that prevented organized counterattacks. Japanese tactical communications, intercepted during the battle, revealed the devastating impact of American shotgun tactics. Lieutenant Colonel Kunio Nakagawa Jr., commanding the island's eastern sector, reported that his positions were being destroyed by thunder weapons that kill with sound alone. His men, trained in traditional infantry combat, had no doctrine for defending against weapons that could eliminate entire squads with individual shots. The technical specifications that made the M12 so effective were products of American industrial precision that Japanese manufacturers could not match. Each weapon's chamber dimensions were held to tolerances of 5 inches, ensuring consistent performance with various ammunition types. The pump-action mechanism, manufactured from steel alloys, developed specifically for military applications, operated reliably after exposure to coral dust, salt water, and tropical humidity that disabled other weapons. American ammunition production for the Peleliu campaign demonstrated industrial capabilities that exceeded Japan's total wartime output in specific categories. The 12-gauge buckshot shells consumed by Marine forces during the 74-day battle required 15 tons of lead, 3 tons of brass, and 500 pounds of smokeless powder. This represented more shotgun ammunition than the Japanese military had stockpiled for the entire Pacific theater, highlighting the resource disparity that made American victory inevitable. The climactic assault on Peleliu's highest ridge positions demonstrated how American industrial superiority translated into tactical dominance. Eugene Sledge's company, now equipped entirely with Winchester M12 shotguns, spearheaded an attack on the Umurbagal Pocket, a complex of 500 interconnected caves that housed Major General Nakagawa's final reserves. This fortress, carved from solid coral and reinforced with 2 years of Japanese engineering, represented the ultimate test of American tactical innovation. The Japanese had prepared these positions to be their final stand. Each cave was stocked with months of supplies and connected to neighboring positions by tunnels that allowed rapid reinforcement. The defenders included elite troops from the 14th Infantry Division, veterans of campaigns in Manchuria and the Philippines who had never experienced defeat. Their confidence rested on fortifications that intelligence considered impregnable and weapons that had proven effective throughout the Pacific War. However, the M12's devastating effectiveness in underground combat rendered traditional defensive calculations meaningless. Sledge and his squad could clear cave systems in minutes that should have required hours to reduce. The shotgun's ability to deliver multiple projectiles simultaneously meant that defenders could not rely on cover or concealment for protection. Each blast created a cone of destruction that filled entire chambers, making survival impossible for anyone within the weapon's effective range. The tactical revolution extended beyond individual weapons to integrated assault methods. Marine companies began employing coordinated shotgun teams that could systematically clear entire cave networks. The M12's slam-fire capability allowed sustained firepower that prevented Japanese forces from organizing counterattacks. Traditional defensive tactics, based on forcing attackers into predictable patterns, collapsed when facing weapons that could eliminate multiple defenders with single shots. Major General Nakagawa's final radio transmission to Imperial headquarters described American forces employing supernatural weapons that defied conventional military understanding. His detailed report, intercepted by American intelligence, revealed that Japanese commanders had no tactical response to shotgun assault methods. The weapons that had seemed so promising in tests against conventional targets proved inadequate when facing innovative American tactical approaches. The industrial statistics that supported this tactical revolution demonstrated capabilities that Japanese planners had considered impossible. American factories were producing 15,000 shotgun shells daily specifically for Pacific operations, while Japanese ammunition production for all small arms had fallen to fewer than 50,000 rounds monthly. The resource disparity meant that American forces could expend more ammunition in a single engagement than Japanese forces possessed for entire campaigns. By October 15th, organized Japanese resistance on Peleliu had ceased. The final cave positions fell to coordinated shotgun assaults that eliminated defenders faster than they could establish new defensive lines. Major General Nakagawa's body was found in his command bunker, surrounded by reports describing American tactical innovations that had rendered his defensive strategy obsolete. The 74-day battle had cost American forces 1,094 killed and 8,010 wounded, but it had demonstrated the decisive impact of industrial superiority in modern warfare. The aftermath of Peleliu revealed the broader implications of American industrial warfare capabilities. While Eugene Sledge and his fellow Marines recovered from their ordeal, American factories continued producing weapons at rates that dwarfed global manufacturing capacity. The Winchester plant alone was manufacturing 500 M12 shotguns daily, while DuPont's ammunition facilities produced more small arms cartridges in a week than Germany manufactured in a month. The strategic lessons of Peleliu reverberated throughout the Pacific theater. American commanders recognized that properly equipped forces could overcome any defensive position through superior firepower and unlimited logistical support. The Japanese military, by contrast, confronted the reality that their most sophisticated defenses could be neutralized by weapons that American industry produced as routine manufacturing runs. General Douglas, MacArthur's staff analysts, calculated that the M12's effectiveness reduced cave clearing time by 85%. Compared to conventional weapons, this tactical advantage translated into strategic capabilities that made the Philippines campaign feasible ahead of schedule. American forces could now assault heavily fortified positions with confidence that superior weapons and unlimited supplies would ensure victory regardless of enemy defensive preparations. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The psychological impact extended beyond immediate tactical effects to fundamental military doctrine. Japanese commanders throughout the Pacific began reporting that their troops were demoralized by encounters with American weapons that exceeded anything in their experience. The legendary fighting spirit of imperial forces, cultivated through decades of military tradition, proved inadequate when facing industrial capabilities that rendered traditional military virtues obsolete. American ammunition consumption during the Peleliu campaign exceeded Japanese. production capacity for the entire Pacific theater. Marine forces expended 15 million rounds of small arms ammunition, including 750,000 shotgun shells, during the 74-day battle. This represented more ammunition than Japanese forces had stockpiled for all Pacific garrisons combined, highlighting resource disparities that made continued resistance futile. The industrial statistics that supported American tactical superiority demonstrated production capabilities unprecedented in military history. United States factories were manufacturing 41 billion rounds of ammunition annually, while Japanese production had fallen to fewer than 500 million rounds yearly. American steel production exceeded 90 million tons annually compared to Japan's 7 million tons, creating resource advantages that translated directly into battlefield dominance. Eugene Sledge's Winchester M12, serial number 947382, became a symbol of American industrial innovation applied to tactical problems. The weapon that had seemed merely utilitarian in training proved decisive in combat situations that traditional military doctrine had considered impossible to resolve quickly. The shotgun's unique capabilities represented broader patterns of American technological superiority that would define the remainder of the Pacific. Were the logistical networks that supplied American forces demonstrated organizational capabilities that exceeded Japanese comprehension. Each Marine division required 650 tons of supplies daily delivered by transport systems that could traverse 6,000 miles of Pacific Ocean in fewer than 30 days. Japanese garrisons, by contrast, often waited months for resupply and frequently received supplies that were inadequate or incompatible with their equipment. The lessons learned from Peleliu's cave warfare revolutionized American tactical doctrine across the Pacific theater. As Eugene Sledge recovered from his wounds in a New Zealand hospital, Marine training centers throughout the United States were already incorporating shotgun assault techniques into standard infantry instruction. The M12's devastating effectiveness had proven that properly equipped forces could overcome any defensive position through superior firepower and tactical innovation. General Curtis, LeMay's staff planners, recognized that Peleliu's tactical lessons applied to the upcoming invasion of Japan. Intelligence estimates suggested that Japanese home islands contained 40,000 cave positions similar to those encountered on Peleliu. However, American industrial capacity could now produce sufficient specialized weapons to neutralize these defenses systematically. The prospect of invading fortified positions that had once seemed impossible now appeared routine given adequate equipment and supplies. The strategic implications extended beyond immediate tactical applications to fundamental shifts in military doctrine. Traditional concepts of defensive advantage were becoming obsolete when attackers possessed unlimited resources and technological superiority. Japanese military leaders throughout the Pacific recognized that their defensive strategies, however sophisticated, could not compensate for industrial capabilities that exceeded their comprehension. American weapon production. Statistics for late 1944 demonstrated industrial achievements that redefined military possibilities. Winchester was manufacturing 15,000 M12 shotguns monthly, while Remington's facilities produced an additional 8,000 similar weapons. Combined with ammunition production that exceeded 2 billion rounds annually, these capabilities ensured that American forces could employ specialized weapons for any tactical requirement. The technological advantages extended beyond individual weapons to integrated systems that maximized combat effectiveness. American forces employed standardized ammunition that allowed tactical flexibility impossible with mixed weapon systems. Each Marine squad could redistribute ammunition based on immediate requirements, knowing that resupply would arrive within hours rather than weeks. Japanese forces, by contrast, often found themselves with weapons they could not supply adequately. Radio intercepts from Japanese commanders throughout the Pacific revealed growing recognition that continued resistance was militarily futile. Reports from Peleliu had demonstrated American capabilities that exceeded previous intelligence estimates by orders of magnitude. The weapons and tactics that had proven effective against traditional opponents were inadequate. When facing forces equipped with unlimited resources and technological innovations, the industrial networks supporting American military operations represented organizational achievements unprecedented in human history. Liberty ship production had reached one vessel every 42 hours, while aircraft manufacturing exceeded 9,000 planes monthly. These capabilities meant that tactical innovations like shotgun assault methods could be disseminated throughout global military operations faster than enemies could develop. Countermeasures: Eugene Sledge's experiences with the Winchester M12 exemplified broader patterns of American military effectiveness. Individual weapons that seemed unremarkable in isolation proved decisive when supported by industrial systems that could produce them in unlimited quantities. The shotgun's tactical advantages were meaningless without ammunition supplies that exceeded enemy stockpiles, logistical networks that could deliver equipment globally, and training systems that could disseminate new techniques rapidly throughout military organizations. The industrial transformation that made American victory at Peleliu possible represented the culmination of democratic mobilization unprecedented in human history. While Eugene Sledge and other combat veterans struggled with the psychological aftermath of cave warfare, American factories continued operating at capacity levels that exceeded the combined output of all Axis powers. The Winchester plant that had produced his M12 shotgun now employed 15,000 workers in round-the-clock shifts, manufacturing weapons faster than the military could distribute them. The scope of American wartime production challenged traditional concepts of industrial capacity. United States steel production in 1944 exceeded 90 million tons annually, more than Germany, Japan, and Italy combined had produced throughout the entire war. This material abundance translated directly into military capabilities that rendered enemy resistance increasingly futile. American forces could expend resources in single engagements that exceeded total enemy stockpiles without affecting operational sustainability. The technological innovations that emerged from wartime production requirements would reshape post-war global development. The precision manufacturing techniques developed for weapons like the M12 would subsequently revolutionize civilian industries. The quality control methods that ensured shotgun reliability would become standard practices that established American industrial leadership in aerospace, electronics, and automotive manufacturing. Japanese industrial production, by contrast, had collapsed under the combined pressure of strategic bombing and resource shortages. Steel output had fallen to fewer than 2 million tons annually, while ammunition production could not supply existing forces adequately. The resource disparities that had seemed manageable in 1941 now appeared insurmountable, making continued resistance militarily meaningless, regardless of tactical innovations or defensive preparations. The logistical achievements that supported Pacific operations demonstrated organizational capabilities that exceeded Japanese comprehension. American transport networks could deliver 50,000 tons of supplies daily across 6,000 miles of ocean, while Japanese merchant shipping had been reduced to coastal vessels that operated only at night. The industrial foundation that made these capabilities possible represented democratic mobilization on a scale that totalitarian systems could not match. Eugene Sledge's Winchester M12 represented individualist elements in an industrial system that produced 2.4 million rifles monthly while maintaining quality standards that exceeded peacetime specifications. Each weapon underwent inspection procedures that would have been considered impossibly demanding before the war, yet American factories achieved these standards routinely while increasing production rates by 300% annually. The strategic consequences of industrial superiority extended beyond immediate military applications to post-war global influence. American productive capacity would enable reconstruction, assistance that established democratic influence throughout Europe and Asia. The industrial networks, developed for military production, would drive peacetime innovations in consumer goods, aerospace technology, and scientific research that would define American leadership for decades. The human cost of victory remained sobering. despite technological advantages. American casualties in the Pacific theater exceeded 400,000, while Japanese military and civilian losses approached 3 million. However, the industrial capabilities that made victory possible also enabled rapid demobilization and reconstruction that minimized post-war suffering compared to previous conflicts of similar scope. The transformation of American society through wartime industrial mobilization created capabilities that would define global leadership for generations. Eugene Sledge returned home to Alabama in 1945 to find a nation fundamentally changed by the productive achievements that had made victory possible. The factories that had manufactured his Winchester M12 were already converting to peacetime production, but the organizational capabilities developed during the war would drive innovations in aerospace, electronics, and nuclear technology that established American technological supremacy. The strategic consequences of industrial warfare extended far beyond immediate military applications. American universities, supported by research contracts developed during wartime, were pioneering advances in computing, material science, and engineering that would revolutionize global technology. The precision manufacturing techniques perfected for weapons production were already being applied to consumer goods that would make American products synonymous with quality and innovation worldwide. Japanese society confronted the devastating consequences of industrial inadequacy. The cities that had housed weapon production facilities lay in ruins, while the population faced starvation that made reconstruction seemingly impossible. The resource limitations that had constrained Japanese military effectiveness now threatened national survival, making American assistance essential for avoiding complete societal collapse. The democratic principles that had enabled American industrial mobilization provided sustainable foundations for post-war development. Unlike totalitarian systems that could achieve temporary production increases through coercion, American capabilities rested on voluntary cooperation and technological innovation that would prove adaptable to peacetime requirements. The workers who had manufactured weapons would soon be producing automobiles, appliances, and electronics that would transform global living standards. Eugene Sledge's experiences with advanced military technology prepared him for a post-war economy where technical skills would determine individual prosperity. The training he had received in weapon maintenance and tactical innovation translated directly into capabilities that employers valued in an increasingly technical economy. Veterans throughout America found that military experience with sophisticated equipment provided advantages in civilian careers that required similar skills. The scientific achievements that had supported weapon development were already generating applications that would revolutionize civilian life. The radar technology that had guided American aircraft was being adapted for weather prediction and air traffic control. The material science that had improved weapon reliability would soon produce stronger, lighter consumer products that would make American industry globally dominant. The global influence that resulted from wartime industrial achievements established American leadership in international organizations that would shape post-war development. The United Nations, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank were designed according to American principles and funded primarily by American resources. The productive capacity that had won the war would now drive reconstruction, efforts that established democratic institutions throughout the former Axis territories. The legacy of weapons like the Winchester M12 extended beyond their immediate military applications to broader patterns of American technological leadership. The innovation and quality that had made these weapons decisive would characterize American products across all industries, establishing brand recognition and consumer preference that would drive export success for decades. The enduring lessons of American industrial triumph at Peleliu transcended immediate military applications to establish principles of democratic leadership that would guide global development for generations. Eugene Sledge, now a successful author documenting the Pacific War's human cost, understood that his Winchester M12 represented more than a weapon. It symbolized the productive capacity that made American victory inevitable and democratic values sustainable against totalitarian challenges. The statistical achievements of wartime production continued to influence American capabilities decades after victory. The organizational methods developed to manufacture 41 billion rounds of ammunition annually were adapted to space exploration programs that would place American astronauts on the moon. The quality control procedures that ensured weapon reliability became industry standards that made in America synonymous with technological excellence. Worldwide, the strategic insights gained from industrial warfare informed American foreign policy approaches that emphasized economic development over military occupation. The Marshall Plan, which rebuilt European economies through American assistance, demonstrated how productive capacity could achieve political objectives more effectively than military force. The same industrial networks that had supplied Pacific operations now delivered reconstruction materials that established democratic institutions throughout former enemy territories. Eugene, Sledge's reflections on his combat experiences emphasized how individual courage was meaningless without adequate equipment and supplies. The Marines who died on Peleliu's beaches had demonstrated heroism equal to any in military history, but victory required industrial capabilities that only democratic societies could sustain. The lesson resonated throughout American strategic planning. Military effectiveness depended ultimately on productive capacity rather than martial traditions. The technological innovations that had made weapons like the M12 so effective continued generating civilian applications that transformed American society. The precision manufacturing techniques developed for military production enabled electronics industries that would make computers, televisions, and telecommunications equipment accessible to ordinary consumers. The research and development networks established during wartime continued operating in peacetime, driving innovations that would establish American technological leadership across all industries. The global influence that resulted from wartime achievements enabled American leadership in establishing international institutions based on democratic principles. The United Nations headquarters in New York, the International Monetary Fund in Washington, and the World Bank reflected American productive capacity translated into diplomatic influence. The same industrial strength that had won the war would now fund reconstruction efforts that spread democratic values worldwide. The memorial services that honored veterans like Eugene Sledge emphasized how their sacrifices had preserved democratic institutions that made American productive achievements possible. The freedom to innovate, organize, and compete had enabled industrial mobilization that totalitarian systems could not match. The lesson remained relevant for future generations. Democratic values and economic freedom were inseparable elements of national strength. As Eugene Sledge stood before the American flag at veteran ceremonies, he reflected on the journey from Peleliu's bloody coral to America's post-war prosperity. His Winchester M12, now displayed in a military museum, represented the marriage of democratic values and industrial capacity that had overcome tyranny and established foundations for lasting peace. The victory forged in Pacific battles would echo through the ages, proving that free peoples, properly equipped and determined, could overcome any challenge that threatened human dignity and democratic progress. If you enjoyed the story, I hand-picked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.